In the midst of our daily interactions, we inevitably encounter moments that test our emotional equilibrium. Someone criticizes our work with harsh words, a colleague undermines our efforts in a public meeting, or a stranger hurls an insult that seems to cut straight to our core. In these moments, our natural response often involves a surge of anger, frustration, or the burning desire to retaliate. Yet what if there existed a path toward becoming emotionally untouchable, where no words, actions, or deliberate provocations could shake the foundation of our inner peace? This isn't merely wishful thinking or an impossible dream, but rather a practical reality that the ancient Stoic philosophers not only envisioned, but actively practiced and perfected. The destructive nature of anger cannot be overstated in its impact on human experience. When we succumb to this powerful emotion, it acts like a fog that obscures our judgment, making it nearly impossible to think clearly or respond rationally. Relationships that have been carefully built over months or years can crumble in the heat of an angry moment, leaving behind wreckage that sometimes proves irreparable. Perhaps most insidiously, anger hands over the reins of control to those who provoke us, essentially allowing others to dictate our emotional state, and, by extension, our actions and decisions. The ancient Stoics, including luminaries like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, recognized this fundamental truth and developed a comprehensive philosophy centered on the radical idea that true strength lies not in overpowering others, but in mastering oneself. The Stoic approach to emotional mastery begins with a fundamental shift in how we perceive and interpret the events that unfold around us. When Seneca observed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, he was pointing to a profound truth about human psychology. The pain we experience from insults and criticism often stems not from the words themselves, but from the meaning we assign to them and the stories we construct in our minds about what they represent. An insult hurts primarily because we allow it to hurt, because we accept the premise that another person's opinion has the power to diminish our worth or shake our self-perception. Consider the mechanics of how an insult actually functions. Someone directs harsh words in your direction, perhaps calling into question your competence, your character, or your value as a person. In that moment, you have a choice that often happens so quickly, you might not even realize you're making it. You can accept these words as truth, internalize them, and allow them to generate an emotional response, or you can recognize them for what they often are, a reflection of the speaker's own internal struggles, frustrations, or insecurities, rather than an accurate assessment of your worth. This reframing requires practice and conscious effort, but its power becomes evident once you begin to implement it consistently. The next time someone directs offensive language or behavior toward you, pause for just a moment before reacting. Ask yourself whether this interaction truly reveals something meaningful about you, or whether it might instead be a window into the emotional state or personal struggles of the other person. More often than not, you'll discover that people's negativity says far more about their own circumstances than it does about yours. This practice of reframing connects directly to one of the most foundational concepts in Stoic philosophy, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, who understood suffering intimately, having spent years as a slave before becoming one of history's most influential philosophers, taught that all of existence can be divided into two categories: things within our control and things outside of our control. The seemingly simple distinction becomes revolutionary when applied consistently to daily life. Other people's words fall squarely into the category of things beyond our control. No amount of hoping, wishing, or demanding will change what someone else chooses to say to you or about you. Their actions, their opinions, their judgments, and their behavior towards you remain entirely outside your sphere of influence. This truth can initially feel frustrating or disempowering, but it actually represents the beginning of true freedom. When you stop expending energy trying to control the uncontrollable, you free up tremendous mental and emotional resources that can be redirected toward what actually matters: your own response, your own choices, and your own peace of mind. Your response to any situation remains completely within your control, regardless of external circumstances. This response encompasses not just your words and actions, but your thoughts, your emotional state, and the meaning you choose to assign to events. When someone upsets you, the most powerful question you can ask yourself is whether the situation falls within your control. If it doesn't, and most interpersonal conflicts involve elements beyond your control, the most rational and beneficial course of action is to let it go entirely. The Stoics also employed a mental exercise that modern readers might find counterintuitive: negative visualization. This practice involves deliberately imagining potential challenges, setbacks, or difficult encounters before they occur. The purpose isn't to cultivate pessimism or anxiety, but rather to build mental resilience and reduce the emotional impact of negative events when they inevitably arise. When you've already considered how you might respond to criticism, insults, or disrespectful behavior, these situations lose much of their power to disturb your equilibrium. Marcus Aurelius, who held the position of Roman emperor and faced countless challenges to his authority and character, began each day by reminding himself that he would likely encounter people who were selfish, rude, or arrogant. Rather than dreading these interactions, he prepared his mind to respond with patience and understanding, recognizing that such behavior often stems from ignorance or personal suffering rather than malicious intent. This daily mental preparation allowed him to maintain his composure and respond thoughtfully rather than reactively when difficult situations arose. Implementing negative visualization in your own life requires only a few minutes each morning. Take a moment to acknowledge that you will likely face some form of negativity during the day, whether in the form of criticism, rudeness, or simple inconsideration from others. Rather than hoping to avoid these situations entirely, prepare your mind to respond with calm detachment. Remind yourself that such encounters are normal parts of human interaction and that your response to them will determine their ultimate impact on your well-being. When faced with provocative behavior, one of the most powerful responses is strategic indifference. This doesn't mean becoming cold or uncaring, but rather refusing to provide the emotional reaction that provocation seeks to generate. People who attempt to provoke anger or frustration derive satisfaction from knowing they've succeeded in disturbing your peace. When you respond with calm indifference, you remove their source of satisfaction and effectively neutralize their strategy. Think of anger as a fire that requires fuel to continue burning. Your emotional reaction provides that fuel, feeding the flames and potentially escalating the situation beyond all proportion to its original significance. When you refuse to react emotionally, you starve the fire of oxygen, causing it to die out naturally. This approach requires considerable self-discipline initially, as our instinctive responses often push us toward engagement and confrontation. However, the results speak for themselves. Situations that might have escalated into major conflicts simply dissolve when met with calm indifference. The next time someone attempts to provoke you, whether through insults, criticism, or deliberately irritating behavior, experiment with responding through a simple smile and a graceful exit from the interaction. This response demonstrates a level of self-control that often surprises both the provocateur and any observers, while simultaneously protecting your own emotional well-being. The power in this approach lies not in showing weakness or submission, but in demonstrating that you are not controlled by external circumstances or other people's emotional states. Building this level of emotional resilience requires consistent daily practice and self-discipline. Stoicism isn't merely an intellectual exercise or philosophical curiosity, but a practical system for training the mind to respond rather than react to life's inevitable challenges. This training involves several key components: regular self-reflection, honest assessment of your emotional responses, and deliberate practice of Stoic principles in real-world situations. Meditation serves as a foundational practice for developing emotional mastery. Even a few minutes of daily meditation helps create space between stimulus and response, allowing you to observe your thoughts and emotions with greater clarity and objectivity. This observational stance becomes crucial when dealing with provocative situations, as it enables you to recognize your initial emotional impulses without being immediately swept away by them. Journaling provides another powerful tool for developing emotional resilience. Each evening, Spend a few minutes writing about moments during the day when you felt anger, frustration, or irritation beginning to arise. Rather than judging these responses harshly, approach them with curiosity and compassion. What triggered the emotional response? How did you handle the situation? What alternative responses might have been more effective or beneficial? This regular self-examination helps you identify patterns in your emotional reactions and develop more skillful ways of responding to similar situations in the future. Self-reflection extends beyond simply analyzing past events to include honest assessment of your current emotional state and the factors that influence it. Are you more prone to anger when you're tired, hungry, or stressed? Do certain types of people or situations consistently trigger stronger reactions? Understanding these patterns allows you to anticipate challenging moments and prepare appropriate responses in advance. The practice of developing emotional resilience also involves gradually expanding your comfort zone when it comes to handling difficult interpersonal situations. Rather than avoiding all potential conflict or provocation, you can intentionally seek out opportunities to practice Stoic principles in low-stakes environments. This might involve remaining calm when stuck in traffic, responding gracefully to minor criticism, or maintaining your composure when dealing with bureaucratic frustrations. Over time, these small practices build your capacity to handle increasingly challenging situations with equanimity. Like physical exercise that gradually builds strength and endurance, mental training through Stoic practices develops your psychological resilience and emotional stability. The person who consistently practices these principles becomes genuinely difficult to provoke or disturb, not through emotional numbness or disconnection, but through deep understanding of what truly matters and what deserves emotional investment. The ultimate goal of this approach isn't to become robotic or unfeeling, but rather to achieve a state where your emotional responses are conscious choices rather than automatic reactions. You maintain your capacity for joy, compassion, love, and appropriate concern while developing immunity to the petty provocations and minor irritations that consume so much mental energy for most people. This selective emotional engagement allows you to invest your energy in relationships and situations that truly matter, while remaining unshaken by those that don't. The secret to never being angry or bothered by anyone lies in recognizing that no one possesses power over your emotional state unless you consciously grant them that power. Every insult, criticism, or provocation presents an opportunity to practice this principle and strengthen your emotional independence. Rather than viewing difficult people as obstacles or threats, you can begin to see them as unwitting teachers who provide opportunities to develop greater wisdom, patience, and self-mastery. This shift in perspective transforms your relationship with conflict and difficulty from one of victimhood to one of empowerment. Instead of feeling helpless when faced with negativity from others, you recognize that you hold complete authority over your response and, therefore, over the ultimate impact of the situation on your well-being. This recognition brings with it a profound sense of freedom and peace that external circumstances cannot touch. The practical application of these principles requires patience with yourself as you develop new habits of thought and response. Years of automatic emotional reactions don't disappear overnight, and you'll likely find yourself occasionally reverting to old patterns of anger or frustration. Rather than viewing these moments as failures, treat them as valuable information about areas that need additional attention and practice. The journey toward emotional mastery through Stoic principles offers rewards that extend far beyond simply avoiding anger. As you develop greater control over your emotional responses, you'll likely notice improvements in your relationships, your decision-making ability, your overall stress levels, and your general sense of well-being. People will begin to notice your unusual calm and stability, and you may find yourself becoming a source of peace and wisdom for others who struggle with emotional volatility. Most importantly, you'll discover that true power lies not in the ability to control others or external circumstances, but in the mastery of your own mind and responses. This inner strength provides a foundation of stability that remains unshaken regardless of what storms may rage around you, offering a peace that truly surpasses understanding, and a resilience that serves you throughout all of life's inevitable challenges.